Welcome back to another inspiring episode of Advancing with Amy, mental health warrior and neurospicy mama. I'm your host, Amy, and today we have an incredibly impactful guest joining us. Get ready to dive deep into the world of mental health with Steve Wilson, the courageous author of Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey. Imagine navigating life's ups and downs while battling the waves of bipolar disorder. Steve takes us on an eye-opening journey from the traumatic event that altered his childhood to the struggles of finding the right diagnosis and ultimately to his path toward healing and advocacy. His raw honesty and resilience are not only educational but deeply moving. We'll explore his thoughts on medication, the flaws in our mental health system, and the role of support networks. Whether you're seeking to understand your own mental health challenges or looking for ways to support someone you love, this episode offers invaluable insights and hope. I do want to warn you, however, that there is talk of sexual assault, so if that will trigger you, please turn this off now and catch us on our next episode. For the rest of you, tune in, because Steve's story is one that needs to be heard. Trust me, you won't want to miss a minute of this enlightening discussion. Let's get started. Welcome back to Advancing with Amy. I'm here with Steve Wilson today. He's the author of Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey. All right, Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, it's good to have you. So, it's my understanding that you have bipolar disorder.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what you've been through?
Yes, I sure can. We have to go way back to the start of my life in the early 50s. I'm 75 years old, so it's a long way past. Up until I was 9 years old, I was a perfectly normal kid, a lot of friends, doing well in school, loved sports. And then when I was 9 years old, I was raped at a movie theater. What I went through was blaming myself, not knowing how it happened. Why did the guy pick me? I'll never tell anybody, and I didn't for 30 years, and didn't know where to turn. Hell, I'd never heard of anybody being assaulted, so I didn't tell anybody because I was scared they would blame it on me. The help in the 50s was almost non-existent. So I just held it within myself. And then about 2 months after the rape, I went into my first deep depression. And during that, when I was very young, that was all new to me, never even heard of it, never knew it could happen. I became very low, thought I was worthless, didn't want to share anything with anybody, didn't think anybody liked me, my grades plummeted, I didn't play with my friends. But you know that bipolar disorder comes in waves. So about 2 months later, I was able to pick myself out of the depression, get back playing with my friends, and graduating from 5th grade. I was depression-free until 7th grade, and then the wave just continued to go on and on and on through college. After college, I had suicidal ideations. I was a swimmer, and every stroke I would take, something in my head, a voice would say, "Kill yourself." And one night I got in an altercation with my father, and I tried to stab him. And the next day I woke up in a mental institution. Best thing for me, it started me on my role to at least be able to assimilate somewhat into society. That was 1971. Go ahead.
I was just saying, wow, that's a powerful story.
Yeah, it is. And it all happened. And the problem is, people who don't know anything about mental health, they think you're lazy, lying, stupid, whatever. But it's not the case.
Right. Oh, I'm so sorry you went through that.
Thank you.
How did you learn to live your life after all that? How did you learn to recover and find some semblance of normalcy?
Well, when I went into the hospital in 1971, they diagnosed me as clinically depressed. And they started giving me very few drugs because there weren't many back then. None of them worked. So for the next 8 years, I never went back in the hospital, but I was extremely screwed up. I couldn't keep a job. I went from job to job. I'd only keep them for about 6 months. Uh, I had married in 1972, and the day after I married her, a voice in my head said, "Tell her to cancel the marriage." And that's the kind of stuff I went through until 8 years later, the psychiatrist came in and said, "I think we've misdiagnosed you. You're bipolar." Well, hell, I'd never heard bipolar, but they put me on lithium, and right away I started getting better. Now, when I say better, 40 or 50% better, not 100% better. And I kind of just went through life with a lot of ruminations, which for your audience, that means your mind is out of control. And if you say something to somebody you think is hurting them, you'll worry and worry and worry about that for however long it takes to maybe figure out a way to get out of it. But it could be months. Um, but I was able to work for my father, and I kept that job for 20 years, but I couldn't work for anybody else. It was kind of like a safety thing. And I had 3 daughters, and my savior was my family and friends. They kept me going, even though they didn't realize it. And that lasted until the year 2000. My psychiatrist had died. I went to a new psychiatrist who was well known throughout the country, and he was in Ohio where I was. And he put me on a medicine called Paxil, and it completely, no, not completely, but it relieved me from a lot of my ruminations. And since then, I've been much better. I still have a lot of problems, but I went to a trauma therapist in 2020. And by the time I was done 10 or 12 months later, I had resolved a lot of problems. So that's why I'm as good as I am today.
That's great.
But you got to see, it only took 60 years.
Right.
Bipolar, there's no cure. And I tell everybody, I do a lot of podcasts, and I tell everybody it's a long journey, but if you stick with it, you can have a good life, but you can't ever give up.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. Have you noticed that there's a difference between the depression that you had as a kid and the depression you have as an adult?
Well, since 2000, I can't remember the last time I had depression.
You're kidding. That's wonderful.
Oh, I can't.
Wow. That's great. I know that you're not real happy with the government and the way they've been handling the mental health system. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the government's assistance is minimal. They have created clinics. The clinics are overwhelmed, and people don't know this, I don't think. But on any day in the U.S., 60 million people deal with mental illness. So that's a hell of a lot of people. They've set up
Yeah.
these clinics that do the best job they can. And if you're really bad, you can get on disability. That helps. They can let you make $20,000 a year, which people almost need to make 100,000 a year
Right.
for themselves and get by. And then what the government does, if somebody goes out and gets a part-time job, and that part-time job puts them over 20,000, they take away your disability.
No.
Can it?
Yeah, I agree. You can't survive.
No, can't survive. And then the insurance companies spend all their time trying to deny payment to anybody who is mentally ill. It's totally different than regular medication or medicine. So I facilitate 2 support groups here in the Phoenix area. I've seen about 1,000 people or more the last 9 years. And most of them can't get help. They can't get therapy, or maybe if they have some of their own insurance, they can get some. Um, my trauma therapy in 2020 cost me $200 an hour. Now, the normal person in my groups probably afford $25 now. Well, where the hell are you going to get any help? So they rely on the clinics, and the clinics are over extended. The therapists they have there quit all the time. So if you go in and you start working with one and you like it, bam, the next week he's gone or she's gone. It's just a horrible system. And the government says, oh, look at how much we're doing for mentally ill. That's garbage.
Yeah, I've heard of people waiting months to get in, even when they're in a state of crisis, into one of those clinics.
That's exactly what happened. Now, if I had been relying on the government in 1970 when I got suicidal ideations, and I went to a clinic and they said it to be a month, what would I have done in the meantime? Would I have killed myself? They don't even think of that.
Right. Yeah, it's a scary situation.
Very scary.
Do you have any idea of what
Go
we
ahead.
could do differently?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I really do. I am right now undertaking I've done about 40 podcasts, and I've got more to come, and I'm just trying to get the word out about what's going to happen and what is happening. And I know that in my lifetime, maybe we'll make incremental steps, but there's no big changes on the horizon. But if myself and others really start screaming about this, maybe over time someone will listen.
I sure hope so.
I do too.
Okay. Well, I'm also kind of curious. You've written a memoir,
Yes.
Teetering on a Tightrope, right?
Right.
That is the perfect title.
Thank you.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Well, that book is a chronological look at my life, beginning when I was 8 years old, then hitting the rape when I was 9, and then continuing all the way through until that 2020 time, and a little bit beyond. It is factual. It has a lot of stuff I can't talk about here on the podcast. What you'll hear today is a minimum of what I went through, and it hasn't sold much. The genre is so small that I never intended it to be a bestseller, but it has allowed me, and one of the reasons I did it is to have an avenue toward getting the words out on podcasts.
Yeah, that's That's wonderful. I plan on reading it. I hadn't heard of it until I got your information, so I will definitely be looking for it. Is it on Amazon?
On Amazon, it's on Barnes& and Noble, and a few others, but I don't know
Okay,
what they are.
great. Also wanna find out, I know you have some, beliefs on medication.
Yeah, first of all, the big thing to tell you is that only 50% of the people respond to medication. So that means it helps maybe half the people, and the other half drift off into the never, never land, whatever that is. Um, I was successfully treated with medication. Um, so that's my outlook on it. It was very good for me. Other people take the same medication. They may or may not get help, but you have to keep looking because there's a lot of medications, not like the 4 or 5 when I was first bad, but there's a lot of medications, and the people should keep trying, but the medications may not work. So for the people, including those who are getting help for medication and all those who are not, there are special programs, but they can only learn about them through going to therapy, or if they get lucky enough to find out about them online. But these are things like EMDR, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, um, and there's intensive outpatient therapy. There's a bunch of them, and there are tools that these people use. They have a tapping mechanism that works on your own body to help you get through. They can use spinners. I found that during my life, one of the best things was breathing properly, that you have a way of slowing down your body by using the proper breathing, and it really works. I never did it, but I mean, I did the breathing a lot, but I never did meditation, and a lot of people swear by it.
I
But
love it.
the big thing, it helps a lot of people, and as I said, I've done over 1,000 people, is support groups. They have nowhere else to turn. They're dying inside. But the best thing a support groups give, and like mine give people, is people to contact with who are going through the same thing. I do 2 groups a week, and in my little group of facilitators, we cover the whole week with meetings. Many, and I mean more than you can imagine, people go to every single one of the meetings each week. It is their only way they can get over the loneliness that is so bad. And it becomes their way of getting through each day. Um, my 2 groups can be the same topics and everything. I'll go ahead and give them a topic every week, and they'll still show up even if somebody else has the same topic. So it's their entire lives, and
Yeah.
it's really sad. And I'll tell you, most of I hate to say most, but many of these people who are suffering, men and women and children, have been physically abused, sexually abused, mentally abused, and their whole lives, because of that, are turned upside down. And the sad thing in the world with people who don't know anything about mental illness, they go, "Oh, he's just lazy. He's just crying for somebody to give him a handout," or whatever. And that
Okay.
stigma is huge in this country.
Oh, I agree. And going back to what you said about members coming to your support groups, which I commend you for doing those, that's wonderful. Going back to them feeling lonely and going there, it's a vicious system where when you have mental health issues, you wear the people down in your family and your circle of friends by complaining so much or crying or wanting to have someone with you so much that, yeah, everybody leaves.
Well, my advice to family and friends and siblings and all that is to just support the guy who's suffering or the girl who's suffering. You can't do anything more than that. You can't fix them because you're not a professional. You don't give out medication, but you can support them and help them get the access to recovery on their own. But don't go up to them and say, you just need to go take a walk. That'll make you feel better. Or I've given you everything. I give you money and everything. You shouldn't feel this way. That just makes the sufferer go down deeper into depression.
Right, because then you wonder, why is this happening to me and why don't people understand?
Now, I cannot explain to anyone what it felt to be in the suicidal and deep depression mode. They would have no idea what I was talking about. It's not like seeing a guy have a heart attack and you can go, oh, I know what's going on, or I think I do. With deep depression, mania, whatever there might be, no one who hasn't experienced it can understand it.
Did
Now,
you
I
have a lot of mania? You talked about the depression, but did you have mania too?
no, I did not. I am bipolar 2,
Okay.
which means I went into deep depressions followed by hypomania, which is a low rung of mania. And in this hypomania, I never got out of control. But I remember one time I was getting my wife a new car and I looked over and I saw this other car for sale. And I said, I'll take one of those. Um, the one of the horrible results of bipolar is the inability to make a good decision and the terrible impulsiveness that you grow through. And a third thing is rumination, where your mind just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's debilitating.
Yeah, it is. And then you can't sleep, you can't do anything.
You can't, I never, from, I would say, seventh grade on, I had a hell of a time sleeping.
Do you
And
sleep now?
back in, there were very few sleeping pills, and they were so hard on you. I never experienced it, but there's sleepwalking, there's major headaches, and it was terrible. So it was almost worse than sleeping.
Yeah. Are you able to sleep now?
Mhm.
Oh, good. Have you been on the
I am
same
on,
medication this
pardon me?
time? Have you
Pardon
been
me?
on the same medication all this time?
Well, for sleeping, I'm using trazodone and working very well for me. Um, I'm also on Paxil, but I had to stop the lithium about 20 years ago because it ruined my kidney. Now,
Oh,
I like to bring this up because people get scared. Oh, I can't. It
right.
doesn't happen very often. And it actually led me to a kidney transplant 2 years ago. So the medication can have some bad side effects. My opinion is, and there were no other good drugs, bipolar back then. My decision was I would rather take the medication and be able to live some kind of normal life than to go off the medication and fend for myself. So I never worried about, they warned me it might cause that problem, but I never worried about it. And then it caught up with me.
Yeah. That's rough. I tend to agree with you though. I would still take that medication again if you had to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I'm definitely going to be paying attention to what the government decides to do. And if you have anything that I can sign or do anything, you
I
let me
would
know.
I would really like to be able to find someone who could send them something that would tell them about what I have to say. Because they go, "Oh, no, we're going as much as we can do." Insurance companies go, "Oh, no, we're really helping people." Well, that's all bull.
Not everybody even has insurance, even in the day of Obamacare.
That's for sure.
All right. Well, what would you like to leave our audience with today? Any words of wisdom?
Yeah. The biggest thing I have found is that you can never give up. You can't get a cure for bipolar, but if you keep working to get better and not giving up on the things a psychiatrist and therapist suggest. And by the way, that means if your psychiatrist and therapist aren't helping you, go to somebody else. Always question what they're doing. Don't wait for them to change your drugs. You tell them when you're feeling bad and force them to do something. If you do all that and keep it up, you can have as good a life as I have.
That's wonderful.
So that's what I say.
Well, great. Oh, I'm glad to hear that you've had a family and 3 daughters and you're doing well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I've enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you,
And
Anthony.
thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Advancing with Amy, mental health warrior and neurospicy Mona. We had an enlightening conversation with Steve Wilson that highlighted several important points, from the harrowing experience of his youth to his journey with bipolar disorder. Steve shared the critical message that while there may be no cure for bipolar, persistence and proper support can lead to a fulfilling life. He also shed light on the shortcomings of our current mental health system and the importance of continuous advocacy. Steve, thank you once again for your candid and powerful story. Your resilience is truly inspiring. To our listeners, please remember to check out Steve's memoir, Teetering on a Tightrope, My Bipolar Journey, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You'll find a deeper narrative of his life struggles and triumphs. If you found this episode meaningful, please share it with your friends and family. Your engagement helps us reach more people and contribute to breaking the stigma surrounding mental health. Thank you for tuning in to Advancing with Amy, mental health warrior and neurospicy Mona. We'll see you next week with another inspiring story. Take care and keep advancing, warriors.